So therefore he says, you are now the light of the world. So we are active. We are to act upon the world, totally active. But not in a natural way, but in a supernatural way. We are to be supernaturally empowered to act. But the context of Hebrews is Jewish, labor into the Sabbath. When the crucifixion came, it was on Friday night. Or the end of the crucifixion, he was taken down to the tomb. The Sabbath was coming, and that's why they were rushing to get him into the tomb. It was part of preparing for the Sabbath. They had to do it before the sun went down. Messiah himself labored to enter the Sabbath because he labored on Friday as the Sabbath was approaching. Finally, he labored for us, and then finally he says, it's finished. There's the rest. Then he rested from his labor. So even Messiah labored to enter the Sabbath there. The work of salvation, when we're born again, it came from Messiah laboring just before the Sabbath. And it says, now let us labor. Now there's a common fallacy when we get to talking about what is a dynamic believer and dynamic walk, the keys of that. There's a common fallacy, even a heresy, that is widespread, that works are a bad thing. Well, that's works, that's bad. To do anything, that's under works. You got to do something under works. There are people who teach hyper grace, that if you're even convicted of sin, that's not of God. Or if you're even someone says, hey, you should be doing this, that's not of God. It's all just grace. You don't do anything. That is not the Bible. Paul, who taught us more about grace than anybody but Messiah, is the one who says, listen, guys, you got to get this together. But so it says, work out your salvation. Why? How? It is God at work in you. So you work out what God is working in. Works are part of salvation. The thing is, the key is how you do it. And without works, there's something gigantically wrong. In Ephesians, though, it says, we are his workmanship. So the focus isn't about what I can do for God. The focus is, the real secret is to learn how to become the work of God, how to become the working of God, the action of God. That's the key. That's the secret. To become the work of God, I'm going to work and do the right thing. In the scriptures, it also says we are his fellow laborers, his fellow workers. And the word in Greek is synergos. We get the word synergy from it. It means we are moving in the same energy as God is moving. And so what we do, it's God doing it. So how do you live a dynamic life in God? How do you walk a dynamic? Look at the people in the Bible who are dynamic. I mean, there's a good amount of them, but there's some key ones. Moses was dynamic. David was. Elijah was. Paul was. What do they all have in common? Number one, Moses, David, Elijah, Paul. They all were men of action. All of them. Action. Moses, man of action. David, man of action. Fighter, warrior. Elijah, man of action. And Paul was also a man of action. He was always moving, or most of the time doing and moving through the empire. At the same time, they were also men of prayer and the presence of God. Moses, it says, he talked to God face to face. He just spent time in the sanctuary. He was in God's presence. David is the one who wrote the Psalms and said, oh Lord, deep calls to deep, as a deer pants. He was deep in God's presence, yet a man of action. Elijah, it says he was a man of prayer. And Paul, man of action, was also a man of great prayer. It says he fell into a trance and saw a vision, a man of that. They were all people. On one hand, you've got prayer and the presence of God. On the other hand, you have action in the world. They were active people. So they're people of grace, but they're people of works as well. They're not working for salvation. The key is get the order right. And the order is you don't work for anything with God. You don't work to get him to love you more, because that doesn't happen. But what it is you let salvation work. You let grace work. So it starts with grace, then it got to become work. It's got to become action. It starts with salvation. Salvation has to become action. Faith has to become action. You need faith. It's not faith plus works. I'll have some faith, I'll have some works. It's that faith becomes works. That's the flow. See, think about who is the one who is everything, and that is Messiah. Jesus is, what was he? He's also was a man of action, of miracles, of healing, of moving from one place to the other. But he was also a man of prayer on the mountain, prayer with God. And so think about who he was. He is the most heavenly person ever, is Messiah. But he was also the most down-to-earth person. Nobody came more down to earth than he did. So he was both the most heavenly and the most down to earth. That all these people have that same quality. Moses, heavenly, down to earth. Paul, heavenly, down to earth. Elijah, David, same thing. They were all the people, they were all in the presence of God, but then they took that and they went in action. If you're just heavenly, but you don't apply things to earth and your life, it's going to be no good. If you're always practical and earthly and you're doing all sorts of things but you're not spending time in God's presence, it's also going to be no good. If you have works without faith, no good. Faith without works, no good. One doesn't go anywhere and the other one gets burned out from the start. So therefore we need to have both together. Heavenly and earthly together, starting with the heavenly. Grace and works, salvation and action. And it's not a matter that these people are doing things from themselves. It's that it all comes from God. If you're a person of grace, then you need to apply that with all your heart. The dynamic combination is all these things. You got heaven together with earth. Heaven's touching earth in your life. The things of God are touching the things of this world. That's dynamic. That's going to bring power. That's going to bring breakthrough in your life. You have great faith. Great. Take that faith. Let that faith become real things in your life. That's the dynamic combination. Grace and works. So the ultimate thing here, it says there's a flow that comes from God. It all starts from God. Whatever I do, from God first. You receive and then you flow with it. So the central command in the Bible is love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. Now, people who teach we do nothing, it's just not biblical. Do we do anything to be saved? No. But once we are saved, we do a lot of things. This is not a passive faith. When I was in college, of course, a liberal college and all that, they put on a show called Jesus Christ Superstar. And there was an editorial about it, and those who were writing about it, they said Jesus invented passive. They had this idea that somehow Jesus was passive. And so that opened doors. So I wrote a reply in the college newspaper. I said, there's no way the Lord was passive. If he was passive, that means you just don't do anything. He never would have come to earth. The fact that he's on earth means he's active. And he's active. He is the light of the world. That's active. It's an active. So therefore he says, you are now the light of the world. So we are active. We are to act upon the world, totally active. But not in a natural way, but in a supernatural way. We are to be supernaturally empowered to act. You have the whole book of Acts. Acts. How does it start? The Spirit empowers them, and then you get the book of Acts. So it all comes again from God, and then it flows out and becomes life. And that power comes that way from God. So it's God moving, and yet it's us moving. It's all from God in us, but we are also part of it. This is Jonathan Cahn. If you were blessed by the part of the message you just saw, you can get a copy of the full message and see it in its entirety, and you can see the full catalog of all my messages. Just go to hopeoftheworld.org/order, and you can get any message on DVD, CD, download them on MP4, MP3. Just go to hopeoftheworld.org/order.